Thank you very much, President. And we start now with another session. It's the session on pesticides use and contamination, so very specific and technical question. That's quite an important topic to discuss, and it's also quite sensitive topic. The handling of residues in organic products was the most discussed topic during the revision of the new organic regulation, and the main reason why it took so long to adopt the new organic regulation. So you understand how sensitive this issue is. Since many years, the organic sector is using a huge amount of their resources to find solution to an issue that most of the time go beyond the control of farmers, processors, and traders as well. So in this session, we have experts on residues, and we will show how much the organic sector was proactive on this topic at regional, national, but also EU-wide level. And that organic producers do always their best to minimize the presence of pesticides in organic products. So we will discuss also what the best direction is in order to have an approach that is good for farmers and for consumers as well. So that is fair for farmers and producers. And so I'm happy to introduce you the speakers today. We have Marian Blom, our Vice President in IFOAM Organics Europe, and also working with Bionext. And then we have Stéphane Becquet, he's an engineer, agronomist, and enologist in Vigneron Bio Nouvelle-Aquitaine, in ITAB, Institut Technique d'Agriculture Biologique, and is also member of EGTOP, the expert group for technical advice in organic production. It's a body that gives advice to the European Commission, so it's very important. And then we have Pierre-Henri Cousin, organic and biodynamic winemaker and board members of France Vin Bio. So we start with Stéphane. Please, Stéphane, I don't know if you prefer to sit or to come here. Okay, thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Pour avancer, c'est comme ça.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to talk to us about this today, which is quite a technical and a political subject. I'm going to speak in French. It's going to be easier for me to talk about this quite complex issue. This is a presentation I usually give in a day. They've asked me to do it in 15 minutes. I'm going to do my best, but in any case, I'll be here afterwards to answer any questions that you may have. I work for two organizations primarily, the Syndicate of Organic Winemakers in Nouvelle-Aquitaine, and for the state, and also for ITAB, which is Technical Institute for Organic Agriculture. We're trying to help winemakers to make the best choices that possible, especially in quite technical subjects. So that means research and science. That's what we've developed, and where we're working a lot, have been working a lot in recent years on our research efforts. All right, so in the next slide, I was trying to show some of the research programs we've been working in recent years, with support from the region, from the government, and from the European Commission. Some of the research subjects include microbiology, pesticides. You see, it's been at least 10 years we've been working on this now. It's a relatively important subject for us. The idea is to get feedback on the problems encountered by winemakers and to provide solutions as best we can on those issues. So if we can go back to the previous slide. Right, there you go. So here's the list of the research programs we've been involved in recent years, which is part of the syndicate, the winemaker syndicate. Pesticides feature quite prominently. We try to construct all our programs with a fundamental research, working with universities, academics, applied research component on the field, in the field, on the ground, and to get the feedback from winemakers and to share the benefits of academic research, to have that interaction between winemakers. I'm going to try not to speak too fast. I'm not going to make it. I've got a slide about context, but I can't work quicker. The context is fairly simple. Francis, the We've had a lot of articles in the 2010s about residues of pesticides in organic wines. 60 million consumers, the magazine. So winemakers are already talking about the subject, saying, well, we need to not do that, hide our head in the sand here. We need to see what's going on. We need a scientific answer, really scientific response to this, to face up to this issue. Wine making sector is a big consumer of pesticides. We don't live in a closed circuit. We need to understand exactly what happens right on the ground. What is the risk of cross-contamination? How does that work in the vines? Just to put, this is the text of the EU regulation. The negotiations were very complex. The subject was difficult to get that through the European Union. Where are we? What's the current state of affairs with the organic regulation? It's up to the EU member states to manage this issue of cross-comparison. They're responsible for control plans, which have to cover two important points: making sure there is no fraud, and making sure that the HACCP risk management plan presents no problems as to hygiene, etc. The idea is that member states are going to have to manage their own affairs. It's a little bit like leaving member states to themselves, to their own devices, and interpret as they see fit. In France, it's the INAO, which is responsible for harmonising that with national law. Up until now, it's worked more or less. We're above 20 micrograms per kilogram. There is the batch is blocked, and the organizer needs to conduct analyses and analyze whether there's been an issue of fraud or if there's been they've effectively managed the HACCP risk management. 20 micrograms is important, that threshold, because that's basically there's a certain room for a margin for error in which is actually a fairly large margin for error. That's why we left at 20 micrograms. Above that, we assume that there may have been fraud. For the majority of molecules, there's no problem here. For some molecules, there is an issue. More recently, the INAO has advanced in more work, and we felt that the Commission is moving on, so it's time for us to make some new proposals, take things a bit further. The idea now is to give more power back to producers so they can do their own risk analyses, and to remove from them the obligation to alert control bodies if they feel that there is no real risk for their business. This is new. This is a new idea. Previously, as soon as there was a molecule or a product, a chemical product which has been detected, the farmer, the wine grower, was obliged to consult their certifying body, and they had the power to decide whether or not to block the batch of wine. So this is the idea, to simplify the process a little bit. You'll see how that works in practice. So there's a lot of files piling up over the last years, a lot of cases, because there's a lot of background noise. So I'm going to show you some results of scientific analyses afterwards on analysis of pesticide contents. But it's quite good to have a bit of context before we move on to that. I mean, it might seem simple, but if you don't look, you can't find. The list of the molecules that we're looking for is long. In conventional winemakers, when wine growers are there, they'll look at what they've used. So they'll wonder what's left of the pesticides they've been using and make sure that they're within. In organic, we have to go and look further than that. We have to look for everything, all the potential entrants which may have been polluted. So we have to do a relatively large screening operation. And something now we're more and more wondering that metabolites, which are derivatives of the principal molecules, we're not capable of detecting all of them. Certainly, techniques are evolving, moving on, and as time moves on, we'll be capable of detecting those metabolites more effectively. The quantification threshold is important because techniques are increasingly effective and tailored. We're going to go to lower and lower levels of concentration. If we go looking for it, we'll find it. We have techniques now which are so precise, so effectively we can find a lot of things that previously weren't available to say. We also need to set certain thresholds inside then, above which level. Otherwise, when you get down to certain fine concentration, it's not pertinent. And we want to know what's going on with our wines, but we need to be capable of interpreting that data. And with that analysis, if we're not capable of interpreting the data properly, then it's useless. And so the closer we go, the more detailed we go in the specific molecules we're looking for, the more power we give to our measurements. That we can get to methods which are quite new. We might get to about 8 to give you an idea of the scale here. A contamination with 10 micrograms. In some molecules, you might have 1 or 18. The margin for error is quite large. So this analysis is just a tool. I want to emphasize that. It gives you a snapshot, but it doesn't explain what's happened, where that's come from. So you need to take it as a tool. I think we have too much of a tendency in France in recent years to take this as gospel. Whereas, yes, there are pesticides, there's a problem. We need to be able to using these tools more intelligently. So we put together a certain number of research programs to try and understand and identify what's going on in the specific sector, which is ours, which is organic wine. We've had two major programs, the Secure Bio, backed by the state, two which are a bit more regional, which have had repercussions at national level, Qualva and Bio, and Wine Without program. Secure Bio is a relatively important project for the organic sector, led by the national government. The idea is to create a shared database of for pesticide management in France, with the data from certifying bodies and agencies into what products are being used and what we're finding on organic produce across the whole of France. So the idea of this database is to make it a living, using tool, and there'll be a follow-up from different sectors across France. It's a big project. We were specifically in charge of the winemaking part of that project. What we tried to do was to understand what precisely were we finding, what the nature of the pesticides that are contaminating our wines. I'm going to be very quick. I'll skip over these, but we can discuss them in more detail if anybody wants to ask me any questions later. This is the first campaign of analysis we conducted on our organic wines. We had 142 samples, and we looked at them. We went to see, we went looking the organic records to find out what's going on, and we found that we have a certain background noise for a certain number of molecules. You can't see them all very well on the screen, but we probably find things like phthalalamide, the molecules which aren't broken down in the transformation process, antibotrytis, which are the molecules which are put on very late in the season by conventional wine growers. It's normal to find those lingering around on the grapes. So, in the second analytical campaign, we started looking at a new molecule, which is phosphoric acid and phthalalamide, and we noticed that these two molecules were really present. The first one you can see, this is the average is around, and beneath the threshold of 10 micrograms. Sometimes that goes a little bit over 20 micrograms, but generally speaking it's between that, below that threshold. The problem with phosphorus acid is that when you have phosphorus acid, we're already talking in milligrams, we're already talking 1,000 micrograms. So compared to that 20 microgram threshold I was saying, you got a red light flashing. It's a heavy molecule, which is relatively easy to detect. So we realized that this gives us sort of background noise. I haven't put the percentages here, but the background noise is around, a majority of the ones we analysed, we find it in almost all of them. And that's we consider that to be a background. Phosphorus acid is just something we find in almost all. And where does it come from? It comes from two major products. Phosphatyl aluminum phosphatyl, Mical, you might know the brand name. You take out the aluminum, you put that in, you get phosphonate. And again, those are used a lot by conventional winemakers. So we realised that this is the background noise, and we're working on that, trying to eliminate that. What we've done a lot at the Secure Bio is working on the how cross-contamination works on a specific plot of vine. So we started looking, we tracked the progress across the whole season, looking at grape level, looking at the grapes, looking at the surfaces of the leaves, and wondering how the pesticides are integrated into wines. We've seen variations over time, depending on the time at which the treatments are applied. INEA have been working on this on their side. We know depending on when you take the reading, if you take it before or after flowering, makes a big difference. In conventional winemaking examples, for example, everything they put on before flowering, you can't find that after in the final product. Everything that goes on after flowering, you will usually find that when you analyse the wine. So we start looking more closely. We start looking at people where we spotted combination. We were wondering where it came from. We tried to identify the major sources of cross-contamination. And we started working out how to conduct a pertinent alert threshold to determine above what level can you say that, below which level is it just background noise, and above which level can you say this is no longer just background noise, this is a problem. So depending on different molecules, some which are more troublesome than others, and depending on when and where and by whom the sample has been taken. So, and we've come out now with a number of guidelines to conclusion on the Secure Bio project. We identified two major sources of cross-contamination for organic wine. The first being from a neighbouring plot. That's from non-organic winemakers, particularly in large production areas, areas where you have organic and non-organic winemaking estates side by side. And then we have poorly management in the cellar. You know that that you can have wine cellars which might be making organic and non-organic wine. So I mean, if you have a failure of the cleaning systems, then you might have a fairly high risk of cross-contamination. Two metabolite molecules which we've considered to be problematic: phosphonic acid, I mentioned that already, and phthalalamide, which is a metabolite of Folpel. We've launched other projects as well to understand a bit more what's going on. Occitanie, which is a region, neighbouring region, we've been working a bit more on the vine side of things. We've been walking about what goes on in the winery. I'm not going to go into all the details and the results of this project. The idea was to look very carefully at what's going on in a mixed winery where they're making organic wines and non-organic wines. We're not necessarily looking at the concentration of the pesticides. previously it's quite possible for organic wine to be contracted during the harvesting process. But what we decided to do is to test the materials and define the qualities we find. And again, they depended on the molecule we're looking for, depending on the temperature, depending on the materials. Wood tends to absorb things. We did some of the little tools that they use, grape presses, filters, etc. All the kind of equipment that's used in the winery. Filters, more of a problem. Vats, not so much. So we looked at all these things. This is all things that we looked at in that project. We also went out to see in the winemaking states where we'd identified problems. Identified estates where they had problems of cross-contamination, and we went out looking to see if we could perhaps diminish or reduce those problems. So we started looking for winemaking states to get involved in the study. We realized that phosphonic acid was really present everywhere. And this is not a mapping operation. We went out to find sites which would be capable of giving us data on cross-contamination, but and we didn't have too much trouble finding phosphonic acid. Let me tell you that. You can find all the results of this data in a brochure, which is published. It's about 40 pages for the winemaker syndicate. I have a certain number of copies with me. If anybody would like a copy, please come and ask me later. And finally, we continued to go further. We started some questions which hadn't been resolved. We weren't really, in that previous program, really able to work more closely on phthalimide and phosphonic acids. We've got a new program which is in progress now. It's actually quite expensive to analyse these pesticides. It costs about €250 per analysis, so that stacks up pretty quickly in a research program. So we've had to break things down a little bit to the work we do. We're going to really focus then on phosphoric acid and phthalimide. And the phthalimide, we're really now looking at the question of whether the analytical method can actually create itself a bit of phthalimide. We realise that analytical methods are continuing to evolve and change. In recent years, we've had fewer peaks of phthalimide in the wines we're analysing. I think there's two reasons for that. One, the use of Folpel has reduced substantially. I think in Bordeaux, people have realised that Folpel has to go. But I think the analytical methods have also evolved. We've got new analytical methods which are coming online, which are going to help us to compare like for like with Olpin and see if there really has been a drop in the concentration. And we're also going to be working on looking at cross-contamination. We get back out and get into more detail on where it comes, where the cross-contamination comes from out in the vines. We're going to try and test the use of spray and the entrants that they're using in pesticides. They're using the source of those pesticides that you're finding that either they're coming from outside the vineyard. So that's one of the conclusions that we've reached, is depending on the type of winemaking estate, you can have more or less risk. So an independent winemaker working on his own, who makes his own wine, and it's only external pressure, maybe when it comes to bottling, there's low risk of cross-contamination. When you're in a cooperative or a mixed winery, then the risks are much higher. So that's why you need to be more attentive, potentially to the different potential sources of contamination. In conclusion, what I want to say was what I'd like you to remember from this presentation is that we know what's in the wines, we know where that cross-contamination comes from. We're partly aware, we're partly managing to reduce it. There's progress to be made, but zero pesticides just does not exist. If you keep looking, if you look at a fine enough level of detail, you're going to find that we have a major important problem with phosphonic acid. We're going to need to act now about that. And politically, we're going to need solutions, because right now the cases are stacking up. The analytical techniques we've got, even in organic wines, we're finding phosphonic acid in almost every case. We need to find solutions, because right now, as I said, the cases are piling up on the desks of the organising bodies. There you go.
Thank you, Stéphane. Okay, perfect. So as I prepared my presentation in English, shall we do it in English? Hello, I am Pierre-Henri. I am a winemaker and a wine grower in the Côte de Bourg AOP, in the north of the Bordeaux area. My production has been all certified organic since 2012. Today I represent France Vin Bio, the French Federation of the organic wine sector. And as a board member of France Vin Bio, I am in charge of the research and regulation. I'm very pleased to present to you today the reflections that we are developing with the French organic wine sector concerning the cross-contamination of organic wines by synthetic pesticides. To begin with, I would like to share my personal experience with you with synthetic pesticide residues in wine. When I started marketing my first organic cuvée, I had fun having all my wine analyzed and offering my customers the analysis of residues. It was in open data and accessible on my website by QR code. This was very well received by my customer, but after a few years it happened that traces of phosphorus acid and phthalimide were detected. Why? As Stefan said, analysis of phosphorus acid and as a metabolite is recent, and the analysis became more and more efficient. Moreover, for the phthalimide, we have some suspicion of presenting analytic error. As an organic winemaker, you are totally involved to work as virtuously as possible. We have a real conviction for the protection of our environment, our employee, our family, and our customer. Nevertheless, as Stefan said, we don't live under glass, under cover. There is no point in denying it. As we have seen, the main sources of contamination are contamination in the vineyard by the neighborhood and the foliar fertilizer, cross-contamination in mixed organic, non-organic workshop, container releases, or we can have some problem in the measurement. There are some error in the analytical method. In France, the INAO put the rule that any traces of residues measured above 0.02 milligrams by kilograms leads to a blockage and an investigation procedure by the certification organization. For the producer, it is a double penalty. Justify yourself and feel guilty. Phosphorus acid is a real problem. This molecule has a very important backroom nose, and it is very frequently found in organic wines. Phthalimide is present to a lesser extent and still raises questions about its origin in wines. Fortunately, everything is not so dark. We hope for better management of the analysis through developing the links between the labs for a better common interpretation. In France, we have the minimis. It is a good example. Through giving a more objective view with statistics from national studies, but at the same time, the problem of exceeding the 0.02 ppm will become more and more frequent. The labs will develop new methods of analysis that will make it possible to measure new metabolites of synthetic molecules. As he said too, when you search, you can find, you find. That's why we must keep in mind that pesticides analysis must be kept in perspective, and it is a tool. A positive analysis is not a proof of fraud. As a reminder, within the framework of the regulation on organic farming, the purpose is to check that there has been no fraud using synthetic products. But the analysis rarely answers this question, except in case of major fraud or very high level close to milligrams. The other objective is to check that the risk management plan is well implemented by the winemaker. It is more important when there are external services or if it is in a mixed workshop. So many cursors have to be taken into account. Finally, analyses are indicator and no more. The files are mainly evaluated according to the way the operator has applied the procedure of traceability. Managing the files takes more and more time, increasing the treatment times by the certification organization, causing panic, guilt, and problem of commercial management for the wine grower, the negotiant, and the cooperative. In France, the INAO has reconsidered the recommendation for refocusing the subject on each operator's risk analysis. The operator becomes more autonomous in the management of the problem. The idea that seems interesting is to refocus control on operator with high level of risk. It seems logical that a pressure for an independent organic wine grower who does not use external services is not the same as for a cooperative seller in a mixed workshop which present a high level of risk. France Vin Bio and CBio, which is the French Federation of the certification body, wants to move forward on this subject and facilitate the solving of this problem. For this, harmonizing a procedure grid is essential. We also need to train the controller. In the same time, for the wine grower, we must be guided to anticipate the question. In parallel, the emergence of new environmental label like zero pesticide may lead to confusion and bring about additional problems. As a matter of fact, facing this problem implies action, reflection, and awareness. The latest publication about residues of synthetic pesticides in fruits and vegetables shows the importance of their impact on human health, which is what organic farming has considered as its goal for years and years. France Vin Bio will be keen in ensuring the implementation and control of organic label and keep an eye on the new sustainable trendy label like the French Zero Pesticide or HVE, whose promises will lead to disappointment, even deception. We must keep in mind that if there is a moral crisis, there will be a trust crisis, which will lead to an economic crisis. Through reality, we have to fight against fraud. Through experience, we have to adapt and make our regulation evolve to take in consideration the reality of cross-contamination. Through both in the same time. Through ability, we have to fight dishonesty and distortion in the regulations. Through loyalty, we still have to make sure our consumer and customer trust us. Let's be realistic, organic farming is an established system in terms of technique and regulation and have the best chance to reach environmental objective and farm to fork. Let's be realistic, we shall reach the 25 organic lands in 2030. Thank you.
I don't want to be here. I don't want to speak about this topic. I don't want to speak about pesticides in organic. I want to sit outside, enjoy the city. I want to speak about the future of organic. I want to speak about the possibilities. I want to speak about the chances and the good things. But I need to speak about pesticides and organic. As shown very clearly by the previous speakers. Why do I need to speak about it? Well, there are short-term things and long-term things. That makes it really important that I, as part of the IFOAM family and the organic movement, need to speak about pesticides in the context of organic. The short term is that we have a new regulation since the beginning of this year. And as Emanuele said, it is a regulation that took a very long time to come into practice. There were a lot of negotiations and there were compromises that were needed to make this regulation come into force at all. But you can still see the compromise in the text that deal about the pesticides. There is the member states that still allow their own policy to be applied when it comes to how to deal with pesticides in organic. There is also new words, new terminology that makes it really difficult to understand how to operate. So member states are uncertain what to do with these new definitions. And so that's the new thing. But there are also the old problems, like the phosphonates that I mentioned by Stefan. Together with this old problem, together with new lab technologies, make it ever, more obvious that we need to find a solution for these substances. And there is, as a third thing, that is short-term and urgent. It is crises like we had last year, where there was an unwanted substance in sesame coming from India that hit the conventional sector, but also organic had a problem there. And I think also in France there was a big debate on this issue. And we do not have a direct solution for it, but I see that what IFOAM Organics Europe is doing is what we are trying to do on these short-term issues, is we are very active in exchanging information, getting the practices together, and we are really focused on bringing this knowledge to the European Commission to see what is happening now and to try and find common readings, to try and find solutions for the operators, because the uncertainty they're in now, it's how to say it? It's sad, it's devastating, and it's not what you want to work with. So that's the short-term issue. But there's also the middle or longer-term issue where we are working at. And that is, when I turn to the regulation, it's the Article 29.4 of the organic regulation that says that the Commission will look at how these new articles on how to deal with pesticide residues in organic, they will be looked upon. There will be a report on the implementation and potentially a new legislative proposal done by the Commission to finally regulate it or to make a good text out of the compromised text that there is now, or to make even a worse text. That's also an option. Yeah. At the moment, there is no proposal on the table yet. And to prepare the organic sector and to prepare the movement to have a good and joint proposal to offer to the Commission, IFOAM Organics Europe started a project. And I will tell you something about this project, which is, that's already the giveaways. So. Now, it's a project that we, in the beginning, did not even have funds for, but we set out a sponsoring question, a crowdfunding question. We got more than 200,000 euros from our members and from interested associations and partners to start this project. And together with FIBO, we set up an action based on actually data collection and position making. Very simple, but if you want to make a position, first you have to know what is happening in the environment and what the common basis is. So first part of the project is the data collection. And data collection was not only on organic, because organic, as been said, is produced in an environment. So to know about how pesticides come in organic and if it's their own fault or not of the producers, you have to know in what situation they are working. So there will be, there has already been, data collection on pesticides present in the environment, including the surface water, groundwater, air, soil, wild plants, possibly also transport and processing. So in what environment do organic operators have to work? Then there is also a section on data collection of pesticides residues present in food and farming systems, conventional and organic. We send out a questionnaire around to how actually control bodies, authorities and businesses deal with residues in the European Union. And we had quite some response. 130 answers, questionnaires came back. We're still processing the results, but it's really a good basis of, you see there is a lot of diversity in the answers. And the fourth thing that was done in the project, I like it a lot, because what we did was we made 5 case studies, 5 potential situations. For instance, you find a very low level of a certain substance in your product. What do you do as a control body? And we sent these 5 cases, so 5 different things that could happen in reality, to control bodies all over Europe. And we got quite a lot of replies back. It already shows there is a large diversity in how these situations are being treated. The exact same situations. And the 5th thing that's part of the project is a pilot study done on 5 small organic farms in Switzerland on spray drift, so the risk of spray drift. The data that are out of it are still, well, we are collecting it. They will be ready in June, but especially the first part, the scientific report, which is done by FIBL, they are preparing it for a scientific article. And for that reason, we cannot show any data, but I do have some things I can read. Some little first giveaways. And actually, they're not so, if I look at them, they're things you actually already know, but it's good now to have them sort of proven. And what comes from the study is that 83% of EU soils, you can find pesticide residues. So 83% of our soils are already contaminated. In organic soils, it's less. But what if you convert to organic on a conventional soil? Huh? Then, when it comes to water, it's clear that on 5 to 15% of surface water, already safe drinking water limits are exceeded. And with irrigation, these substances can reach crops. So, and on the air, that's also an interesting one. Pesticides can be present in the air via liquid, droplets, rainwater, also solid, bound to soil particles, or in gas form. And it's clear that these residues, they can travel, some substances, they can travel from a few kilometers up to 1,000? I think really 1,000. It's terrible. With the Sahara sand. And also it's clear that in post-harvest environments and in wild plants, there are really strong indications that it's very likely that pesticides are also present there. And yeah, so that's on the environment. And then there was one other thing. If you look at the organic products, it's clear from the studies that pesticides are present in 6% of organic products. It's quite distressing, but if you compare it to conventional, it's 44%. And the presence of pesticide residues in organic products is at a lower level than in conventional. So, if I try to cut it short, summarize it, it's quite clear that the organic sector is proactive. We have seen that from Pierre-Henri, from Stéphane, from all other projects that are going on and have been going on in the past decades, that we are really proactive on this issue in the region, in the countries, and in the EU, through projects to experiments. And this makes sense, because organic operators have the same objective as the policymakers and as EU citizens. We do not want pesticides in our food and in the environment. We do not want it in organic, but we also do not want it in conventional. But we have to realize from these facts and also from earlier researchers, pesticides are omnipresent in the environment. That's clear. And the nasty thing is that the task of minimizing this contamination is fully in the hands of the organic operators, even if the source is so omnipresent, and it's often out of their control. And organic operators cannot be sanctioned for something that is out of their control. So this is an invitation also. We need to solve this issue. We need to make it a regulation that is clear and strict and also fair. And I am quite confident that with this project and with the help of all the supporters in the position making and in the advocacy work, we are able to present to the Commission a really coherent proposal that will be for the best of the organic sector. And with that, I would like to conclude. That's it.
Thank you very much to all the speakers. We had really 3 levels. We have the expert in pesticides in organic products since 10 years. We have experience from the fields, and we have also the expert in policy and regulation. So we really cover all the levels of this issue. We have very few minutes left, but still there is time for some question. I see one here, Martin, and another, yes.
Okay, now it works, thank you. Heine Groschner from Germany. I'm actually very skeptical of this topic. As a farmer, as an organic farmer, I would like, my understanding of the grassroots promise of our quality is a quality that I can guarantee and that I can safeguard. And from my own accord, all I can promise is I will not use pesticides or any sprays. That is what I can control, that's within my hand, and nothing else. I think we should say honestly and loud and clear, organic food is not pesticide-free. Organic food contains pesticide residues because they're everywhere. Just because they're everywhere, they're within our body. We sometimes eat conventional food, and most of us don't even drop dead when we're eating conventional food, because the residues within conventional food is also not really lethal. We have to see this. And customers can expect a much lower level of residues in organic food that is widely proven, that there's just a much lower level, that we really shouldn't entertain even guaranteeing a certain level of pesticides in food, at the risk that a conventional producer could analyze their products and say, it's just as good as organic, look, my residue level is very low. You know, this topic I think we should completely throw away. It is not what we can safeguard. All we can safeguard is we won't use it, we won't have it, we will have a much lower level of residues in our food, but it is still there, and be very honest about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Martin, thank you.
Hello, my name is Irina. I'm from Ukraine, and I want to continue this thought because I'm representative of certification body, and the level of limit of quantification is becoming lower and lower, and we are finding more pesticides than it was before. So we need to make our organic producers to convert all their products as conventional, because we find 0.001 milligram per kilogram, like some of pesticides, and it also can be drifted. It also can be by natural source. So lowering the limit of quantification is not very good for a long-term in perspective, because organic operators, they are not using pesticides. It can be drifted, or it can be from the water, from the soil. So it's just, we need to motivate farmers to become organics. And when we are converting products to conventional, because of this small limit of pesticides detected in products, they are demotivated to continue making organic products. So we need to analyze all these detections, all these pesticides, and we don't need to be so strict for these small traces.
Thank you. I think there were two statements more than questions that we, of course, agree, but there is a feedback from the panel.
Oui. Je voulais juste, I can answer in English. In fact, most of the products where we have pesticide from cross-contamination in France are not declassified. We must be clear about that. It's not because you have a really small amount that it's going to be declassified. In fact, what is important then is that the certified body made the control to see if there is fraud or a problem in the management risk situation. Generally, I have even seen high level of pesticide wine that was kept in organic because it was due to a fertilizer that was organic, it was authorized in organic. You see what I mean? We have, but the main problem is not, we have to teach and to learn and to train such thing, but you also for them to know where you have to be. That's what we have done recently with EcoCert. We have got all the advisor and all the controller from EcoCert, and we have speak about this matter, what are the level, what we find, when, in order for them to have an idea what's coming, and then for them to be able to good control, to pinpoint the right thing. But the analysis don't remove from organic certification.
Yes, at least in France, but in other countries, unfortunately.
We have to take care to that.
Exactly. If I can react,
yes,
that was exactly my comment, because this is the confusion that's already around now in the different member states. There are member states who are saying one finding is not necessarily a suspicion, because in France it's now the 0.02, but there are quite a lot of member states. They say every finding, how small is the suspicion that something can be wrong, and then you have to notify and declassify sometimes. But sometimes there is also a difference between the member states. So it's a confusion all around, and we need really, for the importance of the farming sector, but also the traders and the processors and the whole production chain, to have this clarity. And at the moment, it's not there, the clarity. It's not on the member states level. The Commission, European Commission, they are working on it, but they give a sort of clarity where we think it's debatable. We want to discuss about it. We are really eager to enter in this dialogue with the Commission to have a clarity for everybody. And I think that's so important.
Yes, that's clarity. Indeed, it's important. And our project is about that, to harmonize and to have an approach that is really fair for farmers, first of all, and also clear for consumers. And the problem is in both kind of countries, because anyway in France they don't decertify, but they block the products. and sometimes you can have the products blocked for a long time. In other countries they decertify directly. So both situations are not good. We have to close. Do you have a statement or a question? Can you do in 1 minute? Okay.
Hans-Peter Schmidt from Germany. There are visits by the DG Santé and the DG Agri to member states in the European Union. They inspect how the organic control system works. There was one in Lithuania in June last year, and they found that Lithuania applies a threshold, 0.01 milligram per kilogram. And they reported, this is a violation of EU organic requirements. You should investigate every single case, even if it's at 0.001 milligram per kilogram. So it is clear that the EU Commission's position is that, for example, France violates EU law by applying the 0.02 milligram rule. I wonder why it is that you try to find a compromise when it is clear that you cannot live with that. It's a political position of the EU Commission which is practically prone to destroy the organic movement because you are not under a glass bell, as you all said. That's crystal clear. Now, my question is, why don't you come to the point that you clearly say, no, we cannot live with that. You don't give organic a chance if you accept that as a policy. I really wonder. I don't understand.
Thank you. Thank you. We will not have time for the feedback because we have to cut sharp now. But yes, Hans-Peter, this is an opinion of the Commission, but it's not what is written in the regulation at the moment. So some member states for the moment still implement in a different way. So it's an opinion. It's not what it is written in the regulation. Probably you know much better than me. But okay, thank you very much. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the audience. And there are present for the speakers as well. And we go to the next session.